Hi to my new video. Are you sick of Microsoft being Microsoft and want to switch to a different operating system? Linux specifically. This video might be for you. In this video I'm going to explain the different steps in setting up Fedora 40 and doing the base installation, etc. The main focus of this video is not to give you an explanation of every single nook and cranny there is in Fedora 40, but to bring you someone who has never made previous Linux experience into a position where you can utilize your Windows experience on a Linux operating system. So you have a base fundamental to work with. Now that Microsoft is showing its true colors and more people are getting really annoyed, understandably, by the really respectless and, having a company that really shits on the user, of course, and is doing an amazing job at pushing people away from Windows itself. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to show you the installation of Fedora 40. Now, it is a very popular operating system, or a better explanation is a more better distro, because in Linux there is not one Linux. There are multiple variants. You have Arch Linux, for example, which is my base operating system, which bleeding edge, the newest software, etc. Fedora 40, the operating system I'm going to explain you now, is more a balance between stability and new programs and performance. I'm not going to explain it over complicatedly. This is the basic explanation. And I'm also going to show you some commands and some programs and also explain these to you so you know what actually you are installing in there. Because this is something that, many Linux tutorials, they do an amazing job explaining the different steps you need to take, press here to, select this boot drive, etc. But they do not really, my personal opinion, a good job at inviting newer users, so non-Linux users. So this is what this video is, an oversimplification, but so that you can work with it. Now at first you will come into the boot menu, and the boot menu is really simple. Just click for the steps, select the language, etc. When first booting up Fedora, you will come to the installation screen. Pretty self-explanatory, install Fedora. Just let it do its thing. Then select your language. Continue. System. Now, select on which drive you want to install. You can encrypt your data. If the drive is not available right now, you can add the disk on which you want to install it on, and begin installation. And now just let it do its thing. And now, in the end, click to finish installation. And shut down your system. So, after removing the boot drive and then starting the system back up again, now what we are going to do is we just open the terminal and install updates. So we are just going to sudo dnf update and let it do its thing. You come to the welcome screen, start setup. Location services allow apps to determine your geographic locations. Do you want to enable this or not? And then automatic problem reporting, which do not contain personal information. Do you want this or not? This is entirely your choice. Enable third-party repositories. I would enable this. Next. Your full name. Next. then enter password, password again, next, start using Fedora Linux. I know what you're thinking, you are used to Windows environment, Windows design, Windows interface, and this is completely different than, you know, Windows is. Do not worry about this one. We are going to solve this issue in a second. But first, open terminal, press the Windows Home key to enable the search function and type in sudo dnf update. Check the description, I've made the commands, I've put them in there. And press enter. Password. And let it do its thing. So, now installation has been made, total download size 1.2 gigabytes. Is this okay? Yes, enter. So, now we have made an update of the systems, of course. Now, one thing you will realize that the desktop you're using, which is GNOME. The desktop on Linux, which is something I need to explain, you have the base operating system, you know, may it be Arch Linux, Fedora, may it be Ubuntu, may it be whatever else. And then you have the desktop. The desktop is the graphical user interface, which exists kinda independently of the base operating system it's running on. So you can have, you know, a GNOME, which are using on Arch Linux, on Fedora, on Ubuntu, on Hotdog OS maybe, I don't know. And yeah. The second thing we are going to do, we are going to install Plasma KDE. What is Plasma KDE? It's a different desktop, as I've mentioned earlier, which is more similar to Windows as GNOME is, which you are currently using. And yeah. But now, as you recognize, it looks nothing like Windows. And since most of you are just, you know, from Windows users that just are not here because they are extremely fond of Fedora itself, especially, but want to have a system to which they can, switch to, we are going to install something, and it's sudo dnf install. At KDE desktop. Again, in the description, it's a command. And then press yes, I want to download it. It's going to do its thing. So after the installation is complete, reboot the system. Now, click on your name, enter password, but do not click enter right now. Go for the bottom right and select Plasma. So this one is enabled, and then press enter. So now we are on the welcome page. Some explanations. Okay, documentations about KDE, great. Now take your time, click for the stuff, the explanations, etc. Because now, so. The first thing we are going to do, as you see, I'm working on a 4K monitor. Well, I'm working on a 4K monitor, but through VirtualBox. Well, you can see the green resolution of the certain programs, the interface is way too small. Just go there to System Settings. Because now you can see, now it looks like how it would look in Windows. So now breeze dark, if you prefer the dark mode. But now, window manage, no. Display and monitor. And change it to a size you see fit. And now it already looks way better. Now, first thing for me to show you. Discover. You can either search it here, discover, but it is already linked here. This is basically the App Store for all applications. For example, let's make it bigger. For music production, video game creation, you have, let's go to home. VLC player, install from Fedora Linux or install from Flatpak. I would recommend install from Fedora Linux. Why is that the case and not from Flatpak? I'm going to explain that in a second. Then you can also, Blender. Also install that one, GNU. So whatever tool you need, educations, accessibility, Office. If you want, LaTeX creation, text editor, basic note taking, mark text, of course. So science and engineering, of course. GNU Octave for mathematics. And there are different subcategories. Take your time, click for all of this. This is basically the App Store from which you can install and uninstall packages, which is especially useful if you are new to Linux and are not really comfortable with using the terminal. Then go to your Steam. Steam install from Fedora Linux. With Steam especially, do not install it from Flatpak. I mean, it could be that it works for you. I have always had more problem with the Flatpak version. Use the Fedora Linux version, not the Flatpak version. So here you can see the installation process. Then, of course, we are going to install Timeshift. What is Timeshift? Timeshift is a system backup tool. You have deleted an important folder, you can't boot up your system anymore, or you made some changes, you installed a program, a dysfunctional one. I mean, I've never really had this issue, but then you can use Timeshift to boot into a previous save point you've made earlier, before you made the update, the changes, or before you deleted the folder. Now, let's go to home and open Timeshift. We can also install. I mean, I don't want to overwhelm you with right now. You can inform yourself, check these parts out. This is basically just the App Store of all the programs you need, or most of them will be there. Now, console, terminal. You can either pin into Task Manager or just drag and drop. It didn't work. Now it worked. So So what we need to do, we are going to install Timeshift. Sudo dnf install Timeshift. Enter your password. Yes, and download it. Now that we've installed Timeshift, either click for the bottom left or just press the Windows Home key and search for Timeshift. Enter your password. So what is Timeshift? Timeshift is a system backup tool. Basically, you made an installation, the system won't boot up anymore, and you need to boot into the last functional system setup, which is the program you're going to utilize. So now we can select snapshot type. I'm going with rsync right now. It's estimating the system size. Then wherever you want these backups to be stored in. Then you can choose, if you want to make weekly the backups, hourly, etc. So basically how often and how many should be stored retrospectively. So press yes. Then you can, change the rights. You can ignore them right now. Click for next and finish, and then create. This is what you're going to use. Then we are Discover. Discover is the App Store basically. So, of course, the terminal, as from a Windows user, the terminal can look a little bit frightening, of course. For Discover, you can install maybe game emulations, maybe, Microsoft Word alternatives, Blender, OBS, whatever your heart desires. Now what we are going to do next is install Bottles and then launch it. Run Windows software on Linux. Continue. Now it needs some time to set up. So now what I recommend is to open Dolphin. You can either just type it in, or it's already linked here, and create anywhere you want the Bottles folder. Create new folder and then name it. Why are we doing this? Because Bottles now we are going to create a new bottle, but before we do this, we go to Preferences, Runners, and here you have different bottle runners. What are these runners? These are the compatibility layer between Windows programs and a Linux host. WineG and ProG is more meant to be used for Windows video games. Coffee is more meant to be used for Windows Office programs. Drawing, Word, whatever. So we are going to install Coffee, for example. Let it do its thing. So create new bottle. Before we do this, Preferences, Bottles directory, and change it to the Bottles folder we have just created. Then relaunch the program and create a folder, name it custom application for gaming, etc. Name it test. Now we use the Coffee. It depends on which program you want to install. Maybe if it is a video game, then use Proton. But Now, what the program I'm showcasing now is utilizing Coffee. Don't stress yourself about this one. It's just, whenever you look a tutorial up or, need to install a program, there's always a good explanation for whichever to use. Now it's creating this bottle directive. So test was created successfully. Let's open it, go to settings, advanced display settings and change DPI. If you're working on a 4K monitor, change it to 192. If you're working on a full HD basic monitor, leave it. So now we are going to install a Windows program with it. Now let's open a directory in which windows.ex files are, open with bottles. Now the container we have just created. And you can see it's working. I mean, if it's an installer program, it does the installation process. So yeah, so this is how you work with .ex files with bottles. Most of you will try, I want this Windows program I've come to used to know, and I want to use it on Linux via Wine, which I do not recommend on all programs. I would really recommend using Linux native programs instead of the Wine emulated one. Of course, if there's one specific program that does not exist on Linux, then use this. But what I really would recommend, search this program up in Discover, the App Store, or just, open YouTube, Fedora, and the program alternative. So this is what you can do, but discover the App Store. 90% of your wishes and desires will be fulfilled here in regards of programs. Now let's go to the bottles directive I've created, test. Now I have catch DOS devices, drive C, and you will see this is now an emulation of a Windows C drive, for the Windows programs to work via Wine. Then, when you install some packages in Discover, you will see that some are native Linux and some are Flatpak. What are Flatpaks? Flatpaks are a sandboxed environment. What does that mean? A sandboxed environment is a program with its dependencies which exists independently of the host system, which is Fedora 40. How is this useful for you? Maybe an update came out and a dependency was changed, a program, for example, on which the main program is running on, then it may no longer work. This would not be the case if you installed the Flatpak version, because the Flatpak program has its own Flatpak dependencies, and which is unaffected by the stability of your home system, more or less. I mean, if you can't boot it up anymore, then Flatpak won't be of any help to you. Flatseal, which we're going to use, is the permission manager, with which you can control which amount of access a program has over your operating system. I just want you to know this. Flatseal is there for permission. I'm not going to show this to you. I'm not going to explain it in more details. I try to keep it rather simple. I just want you to know this. Then we are going to install Bottles. Bottles is Wine but better. It's also, an ability to install Windows programs inside it, but it allows you to install different bottles. Different bottles is the same thing as different emulated containerized C drives. So one Windows program has its own dependencies and is not affected by another program, by another Windows program. This is what I mean. But then let's talk about the drives tool management. If you have one boot drive, and want to access other drives, for example, Steam. You want, I assume that you're not going to install all your Steam games in one drive, the boot drive, but maybe external drives, external SSDs, HDDs, whatever. This showcase will be for you, in which I create a mount point and set this up. Then we are going to install Steam, install some drivers, and yeah. Now, one thing we need to also check up. Disks. So now this is inside the virtual machine, but there's something I need to explain. That there are many users, but for example, Steam, if you want to store video games on another drive, so you have the 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, but you have maybe a 5 terabyte NVMe SSD or an external drive on which you want to store games on, or it doesn't have to do anything with gaming, but in general. Now you have to link them into the operating system and mount them in. So what do I mean with that? We are creating a mount point. So Fedora, with run, svr, svs, user, etc. This is the root directive. If we go to open terminal here and press in ls to find out where we are, and then pvd, our directive. If there's just this /sign, this means we are in the highest instance of our directive, the root directive. Now we are going to create a folder. As you can see, create new is grayed out. It is not possible via this process, because now if we mkdir drives, what does it do? It says make directive drives, which translated means make directive is create a folder with the name drives. Press enter. And here you can see cannot create directory drives, permission denied. Why? Because we forgot to add sudo. Sudo is, you can compare it to run as administrator in Windows. Basic comparison. And now password. And now if you leave it and re-enter it, drives, the folder is here. And now we do the same thing. So we're going to enter it. Either you go in there and press open terminal here, or we press cd, press enter the folder names with the name drives. And now we are inside. And now we're going to create the mount points. mkdir drive 1, drive 2, and you can see the folders are being created. Good and fine. Now, of course, there aren't any multiple drives because I'm working in a virtual machine. Now I'm going to show you the same process on my host machine, which is Arch Linux, not Fedora, but the program is the same and the work process is also the same, just for you to see it. So now this is on my host machine, the root directive. You can see, press ls, pvd to find out where we are. We are on the root directive. I created the drives folder and the external drive vd and the other drives I'm using. Now in the disk program, now there's this 1 terabyte SSD and you can see there are different partitions here. And go edit mount settings and edit mount options. And you can see the system could take damage if you change anything. Why is this the case? Because this is the boot drive from which, in my case it's Arch Linux, in your case it's Fedora, is running from. We are not going to make any changes there. Now here we are going to do it with the Samsung SSD. I've created a folder with the name Samsung, and what we're going to do is double click on top of here, so that we have this text, root directive drives folder, and inside the drives folder Samsung folder. And then edit mount settings, and presets of user, disable this, enable the first two, copy paste in mount point this here inside, and then press OK, and then become owner, gain ownership for you, and activate recursive mode, so that you have the ability to write on these drives. And after you've done this, Steam will now recognize the external drives, but also other programs. This is just, Steam is the main example of the showcase here. So now we have, activated the different drives, so that the different drives are now available for you and the programs on your host system. Then we are good to go. And of course, I'm going to show you last skins, which is not something that's necessary for you, it's just cool to know, which can, you can have a Windows Vista skin on your operating system, etc. So if you only want to know the important things, you can stop this video now, but I'm going to show you some cool things you can do. Yeah, I'm well aware this is an oversimplification, of course, and there's still many more videos coming up in, me explaining more details. I just, don't want to bombard you with thousands of information. I want to bring you into a stable base point from which you can collect your own experience with, and so that you can use Fedora 40 tonight and, switch away from Microsoft forever, for good. So, don't lose hope. I mean, of course, in the first times, in the first days, it will look frightening, but once you have, used with it, worked with it, believe me, it will disappear completely. The anxiety, the nervousness, etc. So, yeah. Now, yeah, this is basically what creating the mount points for your drives actually does. Now, this is basically where the informative I mean, this is all in all a really rough, explanation. I mean, I'm overflying different steps because the purpose of this video is just to give you a rough introduction into Fedora 40, its rough tools. And of course, I mean, there are many more alternatives, many more options you have. I mean, this is just, to showcase you the first beginner steps you need to make. But, I mean, there's lots of reading, of course, but all in all, you're now in a position where you can use your Windows knowledge on this program here, on this operating system. So, yeah, to give you a rough starting point. Now, this is where the informative part ends. One cool thing is, you can, for example, go to open the Discover App Store, Plasma add-ons. I mean, this is not really something that's really important, but, go to global themes, for example. Download nothing, for example. This is a skin, basically. But I will show you. Now go to System Settings. Colors and themes, nothing, desktop, so select both, apply. And now we have changed how the system looks. I mean, you can make it look like Windows Vista or anything else. This is just, a fun little option you have. And yeah, I mean, of course, this is not the last explanation video of Fedora or in Linux in general, but this is just me, give you a rough introduction, And this is more for people who want to immediately switch away from Windows to another operating system, and to give them a rough introduction, an oversimplified introduction, of course. But yeah. Keep up the work. There's still much to so do.